Here on the scene on Saturday night when this Wendy's was set ablaze to protest the killing of Mr. Rayshard Brooks, which actually took place just over my shoulder here in the drive-thru. And somewhere in that area is where Mr. Rayshard Brooks was gunned down by the Atlanta Police Department, where he took his final breaths. We're back here early Monday morning, just at the crack of dawn, right off of University Avenue in South Atlanta, Georgia. And you can see that this memorial is growing. As we arrived, there were still candles burning, and there are mixed messages from all sides of this debate as to whether or not this death can be justified. There's a message here that says there should be peace with police, right beside another message that demands justice for Rayshard. There have been demonstrators here all weekend by the hundreds, if not thousands, to protest the killing of Mr. Rayshard Brooks. Many people are still asking themselves, well, what did Wendy do? However, from Minneapolis to Houston to Brunswick, Georgia, and here in Atlanta, we're hearing this message around the world: no justice, no peace. I want to take you over here because we can still smell the stench of the fire that burned. We were here again Saturday night when this was happening. Our Justice for the Next Generation crew went live and brought you the scene as it was unfolding. Now these images of this Wendy's is actually startling. To see that this business was fully functioning just a few short days ago, now under fire ruins, is actually shocking. It's actually very startling. We will be here for the next few days in Atlanta, Georgia, to capture the messages and the laments and the mournings from this community as they send a message to the rest of the world that there will be justice for Mr. Rayshard Brooks. I am Reverend Gregory Brooks Drumwright, and this is Justice for the Next Generation, coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia.
Breaking news in the fatal shooting of 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery, an unarmed black man who was out for a jog.
Tonight, the family of Rayshard Reed wants justice for their son.
Louisville police shot and killed 26-year-old Breonna Taylor in her apartment during what her family calls a botched drug raid.
The outrage is now pouring into the streets. They are demanding justice this morning for 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery.
An injustice against one is an injustice against all. Today, I mourn the death of justice. Won't you mourn with me?
When the crime happened that day, they chose to believe the killers and didn't do any kind of thorough investigation.
I don't think I'll ever be in a mental state where I can actually watch the video. I mean, Ahmaud didn't deserve to go the way that he went.
My little brother became a statistic. He wasn't trying to be that. He's a statistic now.
It was absolutely wrong, you know, how he died. And, you know, he meant so much to me. Touched so many lives. You know, I run with Ahmaud, you know. The world needs to know who he was. A man of respect, a man of principle.
Where is the justice?
Where is the peace?
We are here to find it. here to speak truth to power and to use our voice to bring hope to the community and the next generation. Introducing Reverend Gregory B. Drumwright, one of America's most promising public theologians and social justice organizers of this new decade. He has been a dedicated pastor, instructor, and activist for social change for over 20 years.
America is still good for justice. We will right some of the wrongs that are still happening right now in our neighborhoods and communities.
Join us as we search for truth, peace, and justice. For the next generation.
Good evening to each and every one of you that are watching. I am Reverend Greg Drumwright here live in Atlanta, Georgia. We have a lot to discuss tonight. Since we originally planned this live event, yet another black man has died at the hands of law enforcement. The law, the police, those that are charged to protect and serve are actually murdering and lynching our young brothers and sisters in these streets. It seems like open killing season on black folk again, which is actually how our work spun into action. I want to admit to you that even though we're not new to justice work, we are true to it. We've been in these streets, marching, protesting, organizing voter efforts, organizing speak outs, organizing our community, sitting with our mayors, our police chiefs, our law enforcement officials. I had the mayor, I had the police chief sitting with me in times past, very recently, even our sheriff in the state of North Carolina, Guilford County specifically. And it seems like despite all of those attempts to bring attention to these matters so that they won't keep happening, we find ourselves in mourning yet again. A month ago, I had no idea that I would be sitting in this seat, that this work, Justice for the Next Generation, would even be in existence. A month ago, I was really just trying to pull our church and our community through the novel coronavirus pandemic. However, upon learning about the death of Mr. Ahmaud Arbery and not being able to ignore the consistent calls and the questions that I had to answer, pastor, reverend, mentor, what are we supposed to understand? How are we supposed to be at peace with this matter? Our Justice for the Next Generation work was born. It was just a week ago that we had arrived in Houston, Texas, after being in Minneapolis, Minnesota for a week to lay Mr. George Floyd to rest. I am so grateful to have been embraced by the Floyd family who gave our crew access to those events in both Minneapolis and in Houston, Texas. I would have never imagined, after the outcry that came from Minneapolis, that was followed up and broadened by the work around the world, that 1 week later, we would have to pack up and travel to Atlanta, Georgia, to lament with this community and do this work all over again. For the first portion of this broadcast, I want to focus on Mr. George Floyd. I want to give him a final send-off. I feel a part of the Floyd family now, and I suspect that many of you all do as well. George was our uncle. George was our big bro. George was our homie. George was our godfather. George was that dude. Yes, George was not perfect. Yes, George had a past. Yes, George had many problems. And it seems like whenever black bodies are killed senselessly, their pasts and anything to discredit their character, anything to diminish their dignity seems to come to the forefront. But let me tell you something. George was no different from Greg. George was no different from Chris. George was no different from Rayshard. George was no different from many of the black men in our communities who have had to deal with bias, bigotry, who have had to deal with oppression, who have been marginalized by systemic practices and social injustices. George Floyd did not deserve to die the way he did. Or really, I should have put a period there. George did not deserve to die. As we prepared ourselves after being in Minneapolis, Minnesota, what I coined as the epicenter of peace, we had a very difficult time pulling ourselves and centering ourselves together for his final memorial service, that funeral that the world watched as it took place. We were there as the family gathered. We were there in the family procession. We were there at the funeral, and I want to bring you some sights and some sounds and some highlights from what was a very, very appropriate and dignified send-off. Please watch this video.
I've been looking for hope, been looking for strength, been looking for someone I can always call my friend. I guess I've been looking for you. Whoa, I guess I've been looking for you. I've been looking for peace, been looking for love, been looking for a rock that I can always lean on. Guess I've been looking for you. No, 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 no. I guess I've been looking for you. Oh, I was for so long. I've wondered and wrong, searching for a place to call home. Ooh, just to find you've been there all along. No, no, 'cause I've been looking for you. Looking for someone to call when I need help, somebody who can love me in spite of myself. Guess I've been looking for you. Guess I've been looking for you. I've been looking for joy, been looking for truth, been looking for purpose in all that I do. Guess I've been looking for you.
It was a very, very, very somber morning as the family gathered there in the hotel with all of the dignitaries and the special guests. That morning, we were able to speak with Mr. Floyd's children. As a matter of fact, we had bonded with them over this entire experience. And you all, it was really, really, really difficult for me. And I'm not one of his sons. I remember looking at in his son's eyes and just trying to comfort them and trying to encourage them, trying to provide pastoral care. Of course, you had the Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton there, and you had many other pastoral voices and pastoral presences that had wrapped around that family. But you felt a pull. These were very young men. These were my young brothers. These were brothers in their teenage years. These were brothers in their 20s. And then, of course, there was his daughter, a very, very young girl. As we gathered for the funeral, there was hugs, there was smiles. Of course, this is after Minneapolis. This is after the memorial there. This was after the memorial in Rayshard, North Carolina. Finally, we get to Houston. Finally, Mr. Floyd's body had been flown into town. And the family, I'll tell you, it was probably over 200 people in this family processional. And it was the most elaborate, extravagant, it was the most extensive funeral processional that I had ever witnessed. I went live. We were a part of that processional. We were actually processing right behind the immediate family. They allowed our vehicle to be in the midst of the procession. And so the footage that you watched was footage that we filmed. It was not footage that we borrowed. Those credits belong to our Justice for the Next Generation crew. And what we were in awe of was the magnitude of this procession. We had never seen anything like this. And I remember speaking with several of my colleagues. I remember speaking with funeral directors that were present. Everybody agreed this was something very special. The city of Houston shut down the highway, shut down the Sam Houston highway for Mr. Floyd's funeral. And I tell you, it was a sight to behold. There were nearly 24 Escalades. There were 5 charter buses. There was an entire host of limousines and other vehicles. I mean, this was something that was befitting for George. That's right. Not a king, not a president, not a pastor, not a bishop, not a dignitary or an elected official. This was for George. This was for the man who changed the world. I remember watching Whitney Houston's processional. I remember watching Aretha Franklin's processional. I remember watching Michael Jackson's processional. I am old enough to remember watching Ronald Reagan's processional. Let me tell you something. This was bigger than all of that. Why are you bragging on the magnitude of this funeral processional? Because this was an ordinary black brother. And I will say it like the family said it, from the bottom. This was an ordinary black man. This was not a man of great privilege. This was not a man of great socioeconomic status, from the lower socioeconomic class. However, this was a man whose body, whose dead body, because of a knee on his neck, actually changed the world. It was befitting for George. In the great tradition of the African American church, there is no homegoing celebration without the Lord's music being front and center. If you have never attended a black funeral before last Thursday, you got your ears and your eyes full. Mr. George Floyd brought out some of the gospel's most greatest artist influences. And this memorial service, this funeral, this send-off was much to be desired. I want you to see some of those clips from some of our greatest African American gospel voices. Woo. Kathy Taylor. I asked my crew to stop. I asked them to cut into that video because Kathy Taylor's voice is absolutely incomparable. Kathy Taylor, a Houston native, let me tell you, she recorded that song, "Oh How Precious Is the Name," I believe back in 2008 on Ty Scott Records. And I have been witnessing Kathy sing that song. I've been in many places where Miss Taylor has just laid us out with that song, "Oh How Precious." And it's so new to some of you. You need to go back and support this gospel rock star. And we don't have stars in gospel music, so that sounds kind of strange. But this anointed woman of God and this song, "Oh How Precious," has been blessing us for some time now. I just wanted to cut into this piece and just salute Kathy Taylor for everything that she has meant to the gospel music industry. and to salute her for being so anointed in that moment. That's one of the things about African American church music. We call it gospel music. It's not about it's not about entertainment. It's about a feeling. This is an art form that comes to you out of a relationship with the higher power. And therefore, when Miss Taylor got up, followed by other folks that we're going to share with you in just a few moments, the family was truly comforted by that song, Oh How Precious, and also by the medley that she sang. Can you roll some more of that video? Let's keep going. Nikita Fox, everybody. Wow. Nikita Fox, Houston's very own Nikita Fox, sung one of the gospel classics, We Offer Praise, originally performed by Rodney Bryant. I tell you, I first recall Nikita. I first met Nikita singing with Clarke. She was Nikita Clegg, actually, before she got married. You all know her voice. You just did not know her name, but you can't say that no more. You cannot say that anymore. Nikita Fox really came through that funeral like a mighty rushing wind. The anointing of God was in that place. Let me tell you, I don't know what it sounded like and what it felt like from CNN and Fox and MSNBC's perspectives, but from where we were seated, the power of God was ushered into that place. There were some other great notables. Let me go back and tell you. So Nikita Fox is a lead soloist for many of Clarke's songs. Awesome Wonder, if anybody remembers You're Awesome Wonder. I mean, we're talking about from the early 2000s. Look her up. She recorded her own solo project within the last couple of years. And I tell you, she's definitely now much further along her career as a result of her ministry on last week. I pray that her borders are being expanded. Let's see, there was Pastor Kim Burrell also the incomparable Kim Burrell actually kicked off the celebration with her music ministry. Some of you all may not have recognized him, but if you are a gospel guru like I am, there's a brother named Sean McLemore, a very talented artist in his own right, was actually also there. And Neo, do we have any footage from Neo? Did we include that or not? If we didn't, perhaps we'll get back to it if we have time before the end of this. You all, the music was so anointed. And I wanted to salute all of the musicians, the Houston Ensemble. I wanted to salute all of the artists. One of my mentors, Mr. Kurt Carr, really gave us an amazing rendition of his song, For Every Mountain. And I just want to tell all of my white sisters and brothers, the music in a black homegoing service is very, very essential. The music breaks the ground. It breaks up the burden. It breaks up the mourning. It actually gives people an opportunity to praise the name of the Lord. Music is so inspiring and so touching in those moments. And I can tell you that the Floyd family was served well and that they were very grateful. So hats off to all of the ministers of music, to all of the vocalists and all of the artists. You all served Mr. George very well. There were also some very powerful voices. And I wanted to just recap a few of those voices, beginning with a congresswoman out of the 18th Congressional District in the state of Texas. Yes, the iconic Sheila Jackson Lee. A congresswoman since 1995. Woo! A career congresswoman. I don't want to call her a politician because on that day, she was one of the ministerial voices that spoke to the injustice of Mr. Floyd's death and the demand for there to be justice moving forward. I'll give you Sheila Jackson Lee.
George Floyd was here on an assignment. It is painful to be able to accept that. I'm so sorry I know him in death. But he was here on an assignment. Some folk on assignments only get to stay 30 years. When the wicked men thought they had done something. George Floyd took it 46 years. He walked this journey. Somebody might have said, what good comes out of Nazareth? And somebody else might have said, what good comes out of Third Ward? I am so grateful today to be able to say a man by the name of Big Floyd walked amongst us down those cutie home blocks, went on up to that crimson and red, and began to mentor and make a legacy that no one can deny. So my friends, I don't know if I'll ever get 8 minutes and 46 seconds, Reverend Sharpton, out of my DNA. I don't know if I'll ever be able to overcome the words, I can't breathe. Eric Garner's mother, and Trayvon Martin's mother, and all the mothers, and Robbie told me, I can't breathe. But what I will say, that the assignment of George Floyd and the purpose will mean there will be no more 8 minutes and 46 seconds of police brutality. There will be no more 8 minutes and 46 seconds of injustice and the mistreatment of African American men at the hands of the laws of this nation. There will be no more 8 minutes and 46 seconds that you will be in pain without getting justice. His assignment turned into a purpose. And that purpose was around the world, that there are people rising up that will never sit down until you get justice.
Thank you. Thank you, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Thank you to Congressman Al Green as well, and all the other dignitaries, public officials that were there to pledge their support, their unending and unyielding support for Mr. George Floyd. There was another voice that I am actually most proud of, that was uplifted in the midst of these memorials and homegoing services. It was actually perhaps the youngest voice that came across those daises. Her name is Little Mrs. Brooke Williams. I want you to hear her in her own words.
First off, I want to say, hello, my name is Brooke Williams, George Floyd's niece, and I can breathe. As long as I'm breathing, justice will be served for Perry. First off, I want to thank all of you for coming out to support George Perry Floyd. My uncle was a father, brother, uncle, and a cousin to many. Spiritually grounded and activist, he always moved people with his words. Their officer showed no remorse while watching my uncle's soul leave his body. He begged and pleaded many times just for you to get up, but you just pushed harder. Why must this system be corrupt and broken? Laws were already put in place for the African American system to fail. And these laws need to be changed. No more hate crimes, please. Someone said make America great again, but when has America ever been great? Those 4 officers were literally on him for 9 minutes, and none of them showed they have a heart or soul. This is not just murder, but a hate crime. I share happy memories with my uncle. Now that's all I have, are memories. I still can't put myself together to how he was calling my grandma a name. I believe my grandmother was right there with open arms saying, come home, baby, you shouldn't feel this pain. No one should feel this pain. My most favorite memory with my uncle was when he paid me to scratch his head after long days of work. When he arrived at home, we even created a song about it called Scratch My Head, Scratch My Head, yeah. But after that, I knew he was a comedian. He always told me, baby girl, you're going to go so far with that beautiful smile and brains of yours. Another favorite memory is when me and my grandmother was so worried. I mean, she was crying. All I remember is me saying, Granny, it's okay, we'll find a way. But I wasn't entirely sure about how we were going to get to my uncle's PJ's wedding. We had no way to contact anyone. But here comes my uncle, busting through the door like Superman. I was young, by the way, probably 10 or 11. My grandmother was also handicapped. He had this big truck we had to ride in. I was wondering, how was my grandmother going to get me a truck? But he just placed it in the truck like it was light work. I never questioned anyone's strength. But it was unbelievable how my uncle and grandmother broke their backs so I see their children smile and made weight when it seemed impossible. Quote, Tupac, I'm sorry, y'all. Changes. You see, the old way wasn't working, so it's on us to do what we gotta do to survive. America, it is time for a change. Even if it shall begin with more protests, no justice, no peace. My brother and basically my other mom tells me this all the time, but God sits high, but he looks low. Thank you, Houston. It's always love in the hometown.
You all, let's hear it for Brooke Williams. Yeah, Brooke. Listen, Listen, baby sister, I am so grateful for your voice. You all, I had a chance to sit down with Brooke Williams in a very special interview. Brooke spent some time with us, with myself and my crew before we left Houston, and she shared her insights about racism across America. She shared her insights about racism in the public school system. I am going to lift up Brooke Williams time and time again moving forward. And I'll tell you why. If you can remember those young voices out of Parkland, Florida, that came to us a few years back as a result of the school shooting at Parkland High, I actually became a fan of those young people. I was so blessed and I was so impressed by their prophetic voice to the rest of the world regarding their advocacy for gun control. And just so that you might be reminded, those were young white voices. I remember corralling my African American faith congregation together, and we sat and we listened. We replayed those speeches coming out of Parkland, Florida. We watched their march on Washington because I could not get enough of the young advocacy that was coming forth at that time. However, I remember thinking, why is it that young black voices don't get that kind of exposure? I remember thinking at that time, why is it that young African American activists never get that type of stage, never get that type of platform or that type or volume of support? And I was reminded of those things. Now, Parkland has been every bit of 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago. And over the last weekend, I was reminded of my thinking then when I was sitting with Brooke Williams. I believe that Brooke should be the very next voice, the next youngest voice, the next Gen Z voice in this social justice movement. And I want you to help me to uplift her person. I want you to help me to encourage her. And I want you to help me to break her story. So this is what's going to happen. We wanted to give Brooke her very own special segment. So later this week, on my Saturday live at 5, I'm going to break our interview with Brooke Williams. You're going to hear from her, and she's going to share from her heart, not about her Uncle George, but about her Uncle Perry, as she called him. For now, I want to say one more thing about Brooke. She is thinking about coming to North Carolina A&T State University. Thinking about it. We are working on getting Brooke to Greensboro. I want to shout out her sister Brandy, her older sister Brandy, who has already said, I'm a definite. I want to be an Aggie. And for those of you all who don't know, North Carolina A&T State University is the largest HBCU in the country. Now, that doesn't make it the best, but it is the best. Our Justice for the Next Generation crew is exclusive Aggies. I just got to be real with you. And so when we heard, that was not because of our influence. When we heard that her sister Brandy was really wanted to join the Aggie family, I said, Brooke, you should come along for the ride. You all help me uplift Brooke in these incoming days, weeks, and months. I believe that America is due for another young black activist voice. And I believe that 17-year-old young prophetic voice out of Houston, Texas, who looked up to her Uncle George as being the only father figure that she knew, I believe Brooke Williams deserves that platform. So look out for that interview. I can't uplift the speakers of the funeral and memorials without uplifting the Reverend Al Sharpton. I actually want to go back to Minneapolis. We were there in Minneapolis. I was there with the family, sitting with the family in Minneapolis. And I believe that of the two, Reverend Sharpton's advocacy was the strongest from the memorial there in Minnesota. And so I want to share some highlights with you. If you did not watch the memorial service, you may not be ready for this. This man spoke truth to power.
I want us to not sit here and act like we had a funeral on the schedule. George Floyd should not be among the deceased. He did not die of common health conditions. He died of a common American criminal justice malfunction. He died because of there has not been the corrective behavior that has taught this country that if you commit a crime, it does not matter whether you wear blue jeans or a blue uniform, you must pay for the crime you commit. Is George Floyd's story has been the story of black folks. Because ever since 401 years ago, the reason we could never be who we wanted and dreamed to be in is you kept your knee on our neck. We were smarter than the underfunded schools you put us in, but you had your knee on our neck. We could run corporations and not hustle in the street, but you had your knee on our neck. We had creative skills. We could do whatever anybody else could do, but we couldn't get your knee off our neck. What happened to Floyd happens every day in this country, in education, in health services, and in every area of American life. It's time for us to stand up in George's name and say, get your knee off our necks. Man comes out of a single parent home, educates himself, and rises up and becomes the president of the United States. And you ask him for his birth certificate because you can't take your knee off our neck. The reason why we're marching all over the world is we were like George. We couldn't breathe, not because there was something wrong with our lungs, but you wouldn't take your knee off our neck. We don't want no favors. Just get up off of us and we can be and do whatever we can be. But the thing I want us to be real cognizant of is there's a difference between those calling for peace and those calling for quiet. Some of y'all don't want peace. You just want quiet. You just want us to shut up and suffer in silence. There is a time and a season. And when I looked this time and saw marches where in some cases young whites outnumbered the blacks marching, I know that it's a different time and a different season. When I looked and saw people in Germany marching for George Floyd, it's a different time and a different season. When they went in front of the Parliament in London, England, and said it's a different time and a different season, I come to tell you, America, this is the time of dealing with accountability in the criminal justice system. Time is out for not holding you accountable. Time is out for you making excuses. Time is out for you trying to stall. Time is out for empty words and empty promises. Time is out for you filibustering and trying to stall the arm of justice. This is the time. We won't stop. We gonna keep going until we change the whole system of justice. But talking to Quincy last night, one of his 5 children, Quincy said, you know, I was thinking maybe he was calling his mother, because at the point that he was dying, his mother was stretching her hands out, saying, come on, George, I'll welcome you where the wicked will cease from troubling, where the weary will be at rest. There's a place where police don't put knees on you, George. There's a place that prosecutors don't drag their feet. Maybe mama said, come on, George. There's a God that still sits high, but he looks down low and he'll make a way out of no way.
The Reverend Al Sharpton, everybody. Let me say a thing about Reverend Sharpton's doings on last week. I watched the tremendous pressure that he was under. I was with him earlier in the day, that morning before we headed to the funeral. I was with him in the room with the family at the conclusion of the first memorial, when the family was really still trying to put things all together, to wrap their head around, at that time, what else was before them. I gained a lot of respect for Reverend Sharpton. I know that Reverend Sharpton is often misunderstood, but it's one thing that you all should respect about him, is that he has been committed to this fight for more than 4 decades. Reverend Sharpton spoke these very poignant and powerful words. Get your knee off our necks. Get your knee, America, off our necks. The systemic oppression has gone on far too long. He uplifted the fact that we couldn't even be admitted into the universities that we built, that we had to create our own space of higher learning, the historic Black college and university, really because America's knee has been on our necks. That our Black businesses continue to suffer from underfunding, underexposure, continue to suffer because America's knee is on the neck of the Black businessman. President Donald Trump was headed to Oklahoma, to Tulsa, Oklahoma, the very place where Black Wall Street was and was taken away from us. The place where Black businesses were once thriving, not just surviving like many today. And I considered that announcement to be his knee on the necks of African Americans And he was going to do so on Juneteenth. What is going on in 2020 when a president doesn't want to acknowledge and honor the history of African Americans, of the black bodies that has by far and in large constructed some of America's greatest halls and institutions? It's because America's knee is still on our necks. If I hear another person say, well, you got Obama and you got Oprah, I'm probably going to erupt in anger. If we have to continue to lift up the one, the two, the three, the few black bodies that have made it out and made it up as being our gift from America, when there are millions of black bodies that could have been the Obamas and the Oprahs, I just don't know how I would be able to contain myself. You know, I want you all to start chatting with me. If you all can put some comments on the screen, I want to know, what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you? How has America put America's knee on your neck? Is there, to black and brown bodies and voices out there, is there a time where you felt the constraint or the restraint of your success, of your higher self, of your purpose? Is there a time where you knew that you were capable and qualified, however you were overlooked or undermined? Talk to me. Tell me what it's been like to deal with that knee on your neck. I will tell you that one of the things that concerns me the most about our higher educational system is standardized testing. African Americans continue to underperform on standardized tests. And it's not because we are inferior. It's not because white America is smarter than black America. However, you would have to understand, America, why the educational system poses so many challenges to the black and brown pupil. It starts at a very young age. It starts with just equity itself. It starts with the fact that most black kids in America haven't even had the opportunity to travel outside of their own state until they're in their 20s. When our white counterparts, when their education and their exposure to the world starts in the single digits, the early ages. I remember my white counterparts traveling extensively. That if you grow up in a house where there's a library, if you grow up in a house, in a home where there's a tutor, there's access to a tutor, if you grow up in a family that sends you to tech camps, to medical camps, that sends you to engineering camps and sends you to Lego competitions and gives you all of this privilege and access to form your higher self, to form your academic intellectuality, while our black and brown kids have to settle for Salvation Army boys and girls clubs and Nana's daycare. And I loved spending time with my grandmother, and I am a product of the Boys and Girls Club. Not speaking to undermine it all, but therein you have the reason. Somebody says, in the 70s, I applied for a receptionist job through an agency. I was qualified, passed the test, but she told me to my face they weren't looking for a colored girl to put out front. That's from Bishop Alicia Peake Patterson, her testimony about America's knee on her neck over 5 decades ago. Thank you for watching, Bishop Patterson. Brother Tayshawn Bowman, a young man in his 20s, says, having my intelligence questioned by the vice principal of my old high school in Alabama. America's knee on his neck. And that's one of the things that even as students, as young people in our mid-teens, we could feel this oppression. Someone else says SAT high scores typically come from the richer families that can pay for high-ranked tutors. And need I say that there is still litigation ongoing from the SAT testing scandal, where the richest of the rich were paying people to test for their children. You all would have to know that we will never know the all of that story. As a matter of fact, one of my schools, one of my alma maters, Wake Forest University, where I received my master's education, one of the top schools in the country, was a part of that cheating scandal. And it wasn't black folks, it was white folks. And it wasn't middle class white folks, it was rich white folks. It was highly notable white folks who got caught. You all know it's been going on for a long time. And our black and brown intellectuals have been turned away, have been denied by high-ranking institutions, having to settle for other paths and routes to be educated and to be uplifted. Tanisha Thomas out of New York says standardized tests need to be abolished. I agree, sister. They were only started and designed to show the white intellect is greater than the black intellect. Let me tell you something. I remember going head to head with the dean of a law school. The dean of a law school. The dean of a law school making a case that standardized testing is keeping some of your best, brightest, but black out of your program. I would wish, and let me go ahead and call it out, Wake Forest Law. But it's not just Wake, but yeah, it was Wake, but not just Wake, it was more. It's other schools. You all need to wake up. You need to find a better way to evaluate and adjudicate black talent, because standardized testing is not fair. It is an unjust way to evaluate black talent. Knees have been on our necks for all our lives. I was hoping someone would say something about, and I don't think I've seen all the comments. I don't know if you can refresh them if there are more comments, but the redlining in banking practices. Why is it that many of our African Americans cannot secure mortgages or prime mortgage rates? Because of the practice of redlining. That black folks' money spends very well every month in the real estate market, but most of us have to settle for renting. That it is a fact. I'm not on here talking about opinions. I'll give you my opinion in a few more moments. But right now I'm talking about facts. That it is a fact that black, specifically African Americans and Hispanics, are turned away at disproportionate rates when it comes to applying for home and mortgage loans. Also, of those who are approved, they are paying higher interest rates because of redlining. I remember purchasing a car, and I'll tell my business. Purchasing a car, it was a very rare vehicle. I had to have it. It was only 3 of them that we could locate in the United States. I had to have it. I remember purchasing that vehicle with 15%, with a 15% APR. And I knew leaving that dealership that something, of course, was wrong. 15%. Only 6 months later, to apply to refinance that car, and I got that same car refinanced just a few months later. As a matter of fact, let me be clear, it wasn't 6 months. A few months later, I got that same 15% APR loan refinanced for under 3%. And then a few months after that, a mysterious check comes in the mail. A check comes in the mail along with a very short notice saying this is a part of a class action settlement from a lender. Where do I get checks from? What lender is this? As I dug into it, the that signed me up for 15% APR. I mean, I know I put my name on that dotted line. It was a rare car. I wanted the car. The lender was found guilty of discriminatory redlining practices. That the government had investigated them and found them to be in violation of fair lending practices. And therefore they issued settlement checks. Now, I had a problem with that because if I was a part of litigation, I would have liked to have been aware of it. But there you have it, America. That's one of my many stories about that knee being on our neck. Yeah. Someone says, I remember, someone remembers me telling that story. Here's another testimonial. Being overlooked in corporate America for opportunities unless the company needs to meet its diversity standards. Miss Taylor Chanel shares her own account of America's knee being on our necks. How many of you all, if I had you in this room with me, how many of you all would actually say, oh, me too. Me too. Taylor, me too. Me too. If we are giving entry-level corporate jobs, we are welcomed into that space, and we're told, be grateful. You're the token. You're be grateful. Taylor, you're a rock star around here. Well, it's interesting because I can see that I make peasant pennies and not a rock star salary. Do you know how hard it is for African American women and men to make over 6 figures? Do you know how difficult it is? And the few that do are breakout sensations. That the median average income of the African American family is beneath $40,000 a year. Our white counterparts nearly double. Why? That knee. That knee has been on our necks. How many of you all out there have trained your supervisors? How many black professionals have trained your own oppressor how to do their job. I don't want to keep going. I'm probably boring you. But I just wanted to talk about those words spoken out of Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton's eulogy. Reverend Sharpton, thank you. Thank you for your commitment to the work of justice. Thank you for your prophetic voice. Thank you for not allowing the haters to stop you. Thank you for being present with, and thank you for fighting for justice for the next generation. We will see you in D.C., Reverend Sharpton, on August 28th. That's a great time for me to put this plug in. You all, this Justice for the Next Generation thing, it was really supposed to be just a town hall event, and it is actually developing into an organization of sorts. It is developing into a coalition of sorts. Obviously, we are here in our 4th city tour, and I don't say that braggadociously. It makes no sense. Y'all know what? I'm a preacher, but I'm going to say it like I feel it tonight. It makes no damn sense that we are here in Atlanta because another black body has died. This is not the tour that I was hoping that I would be on in the summer of 2020. Citadel Church, I don't know if I'm making you proud or ashamed in this moment, but I just have to be Greg right now, because I have sat where these bodies bled out, breathed out their last breaths. I have sat with the Ahmaud family, Ahmaud Arbery family. I've sat with his mother, his father, his best friends, his coach, his community. I have sat with the Floyd family. I have sat with his nephew. I have sat with his niece, with his children, with his brothers, with his, you all. I have sat with these families. And I'm going to tell you right now, it makes no damn sense that we have to continue to mourn this way. It makes no sense that we have to defy the advisement of health professionals in the midst of a pandemic to posit social justice in a country that was already in peril because of a novel virus. But our president and our justice system, our law enforcement systems wouldn't take their knees off of black necks. Before I move to what is happening here in Atlanta, I want to share one more reflection. I invited you to, thank you so much. I just wanted to acknowledge the chats one more time because I invited you all to share your thoughts. Now let me just share these final moments of Mr. George Floyd's funeral, memorial, and homegoing celebration. Our Justice for the Next Generation camera crew was the only crew at the committal. You know, even after the great send-off, the amazing eulogies, the proclamations, the announcements, the marching orders that we received, even after the celebrations of song that we witnessed, seeing Mr. George Floyd's casket go into his mausoleum, his final resting place, it really, really hurt. And I just couldn't imagine what his family was feeling. I couldn't imagine what his nephew, Brandon, what his niece, Brooke, what his son, Ty, was feeling. Because I was feeling anguish. I don't know, being there with them for so long and being at the place where Mr. George took his last few steps, being in that store. I don't believe that any other network has made it inside of the store. We spent more than an hour in the store where Mr. George was. We spent days right there where his body took his last breaths. Being with the Minneapolis community and the Floyd family, I felt a part of that family, and seeing his body be interred, it made me sad. It made me question, will God grace me to overcome the prejudice, the racism, the bigotry, the bias? It made me question, can I curb my black insanity? Can I curb my black anger? When I come out of these meetings and when we come out of this election, nobody knows what the results are going to be. After these officers who have been charged, after they've been tried, will God grace us to be able to live on in peace and equality? Will we ever experience justice for the next generation? I want to say thank you to Attorney Ben Crump and his crew, who blessed us and graced us and gave us permission to speak with the family. Thank you to the family. You all are some of the most humble people that I've ever met. I want to say thank you to my own crew for being there. As you can see, they were the only ones that could have brought you those images from his interment there at the mausoleum where he was laid to rest. And even though he can't hear us, I believe his spirit is living on inside of us. I want to say thank you, Mr. George Floyd. I was contacted by one of your closest friends in the last few days, George. One of your very close friends, a sister to you. She said, Reverend Drumwright, I don't want my name out there. I don't want any clout. I just want you to know something about George. That he had made the biggest turnaround that I had ever seen any black man make. That George Floyd was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, seeking his higher self. She shared with me and my crew that George Floyd's life had come up so amazingly. She shared that he was a man of God, that it was actually ministry that took him to Minnesota. Ministry. A pastor there in Houston helped him get to Minnesota in seek of a better way of life. She wanted everybody to know that Mr. George Floyd did not deserve to die like he did. George, we salute you. Rest well. We have our marching orders, and we'll take it from here. I want to turn my attention now to what's happening here in Atlanta, Georgia. Ironically, if not providentially, I don't want to say coincidentally, but providentially, as the Lord would have it, one of our crew members was here on the ground when the violence and the demonstrations and the rioting took place Saturday night in the wake of Mr. Rayshard Brooks. We have been working so hard, we have not been able to put together very much of a package for you, but I went live late Saturday night. On into the midnight hour, there were hundreds of viewers watching my live as we broke that news. And I want to salute Mr. Christopher Goldman, who showed us the images of the Wendy's, showed us the protesters organizing themselves, marching onto the highway, gave us an interview with one of the cops, one of the Atlanta police officers who was there, a black man who was saying, I am here to protect and serve, but as a black man, I am here to make sure that justice is also served. So I won't bring you that live. You can go back on my timeline and watch that. And I encourage you to. I think that video is now 5,000, 6,000 views. It's very, very, very insightful footage. And that conversation was also an exclusive. I want to invite you, before I share this last segment, to follow me on Facebook, but more importantly, please subscribe to my YouTube channel at Greg Drumwright. Subscribe to my YouTube channel at Greg Drumwright. And on my social media platform, we will be sharing the information about the March on Washington on April 28th. I want to take not one bus, not two buses, but I want to take several buses. I want to charter a plane. Perhaps somebody will help us to get that done. All of this pledged support for justice. Well, we need some of that support because we've been about a good work for more than a decade. Our ministry is 17 years old, and we've been doing this justice work now for some time, organizing, marching, protesting, running for office, planting people in educational career paths to make a difference in our classrooms, organizing community developed organizations, helping the homeless become happy, and so much more. We're not new to this, we're true to this. You all, I want to sign off with some images from Atlanta. Don't go anywhere yet. I want to show you what our first day here was like. And let me preface this raw footage with this disclaimer. There is some profanity. My crew has reminded me, and they said, Pastor, we don't want to show that. And I told them, no, show it. This is the America that we are living in. And even though I am an ordained minister, I do not require people to respect that title, because I know people are hurting in these streets. People are angry in these streets. These same people love God, but they are sick and tired of that knee being on our necks. And so if you are offended by the profanity, please receive this disclaimer and this apology by me. However, I hope that you would understand why I wanted to keep it in. This is some very raw footage, and I'm going to share some comments with you. Go ahead and roll that footage. This is inside of the Wendy's, or rather outside of, excuse me, the Wendy's that was on fire. We apologize if this footage may be turned another direction. We're just really hoping to give it to you in its raw form. We didn't have a chance to really edit it, but that is the Wendy's that was set on fire. This is where Mr. Rayshard was killed. The protesters took to this establishment to posit their protest. As I was saying in the front of this entire broadcast, many people are asking, well, what did Wendy's do? Well, I think right now what we should understand is that these protesters are not answering that question, but they are speaking out and saying where there is no justice, there will be no peace. And so it may not be fair to the Wendy's Corporation that this happened to their establishment here in Atlanta, Georgia. We were at a Wendy's in Minneapolis, Minnesota that was also set ablaze. But we want to send a clear message. These buildings can be rebuilt, but these bodies cannot be revived. Yeah. Can you share with me some more footage from, just keep it rolling. Just keep it rolling. Just keep it rolling. And this is earlier this morning. 2 days after the memorial had been constructed right outside of the front of that Wendy's. This is for all of you ATLians. This is right on University Parkway, right off of 75. Let me say that I knew exactly where this was. I spent time right here. I used to get my hair cut on the other side of the bridge that they protested and stopped traffic, right on the other side of this exit. The Wendy's is in utter ruin. We may be having some technical difficulties with the video flowing. Okay. Here's some more footage, organizing taking place. Just want to show you some of the sites. And we apologize that this is not in the correct orientation. We just want to bring you some raw footage here. This is right off of the highway. This is earlier today at the state capitol. There was a march to the state capitol. The Georgia state legislature was in session today to vote on new policies and new laws that would govern a response to hate crimes. This was earlier today at the state capitol. You've seen not just black protesters and demonstrators, but you've seen white demonstrators there. Politicians don't get stuck on stupid. We're not against the police. We are against police brutality. That is a very powerful message that came out of the protest. I want to just acknowledge all of you all who have been protesting. It's really important that you lift your voice during this time. They're going to show us some more footage. We're just switching some things over, switching some things out. Let me tell you, this crew is amazing. And we are here in Atlanta with just a fraction of our crew. I was so encouraged to look on my Facebook today and find that people were saying, Reverend Drumwright, how can we support you? You can do so by going to our Cash App G Drumwright. I have been underwriting this work. And so if you are blessed by our work, if you believe in our work and what we are doing, let me tell you, there's some real cost that's attached to it. And so please support us. And we're going to put together the Justice for the Next Generation website really soon. Let's roll some more footage. Let's do that really quickly. Just wanted to share with you. So what was happening right here is when we got to the memorial today, we were so shocked that there was no clear demarcation where his body actually bled out. We were shocked that vehicles were parked where Mr. Brooks was gunned down. And so we began to take out our phones and replay the footage, the video of the attempted arrest and the killing of Mr. Brooks until we could figure out exactly where he took those final steps and fell to his eventual death. And what happened was, and this was about at 7-something this morning, folks. We had just arrived in Atlanta. And so we actually began to ask folks to move their cars so that we could really determine where that site was. Brother Sam Pierre is walking it out. He's actually saying, is this about the spot? Is this about the place? And we were just really curious to find that exact spot. And so what we did is we decided that we would go to a local store and pick up some supplies so that we could actually section off that area. We just literally sprung into action. Can they hear this? Y'all ready? Well, I'm gonna get some poster board and make some signs first.
They said they only open from Saturday to Sunday.
Got back to the windows with our cones and with our spray paint. All right, Amora, I never imagined that I would be doing any graffiti work. We wanted everyone, and by that time, hundreds of people had begun showing up, driving through. We wanted to send a message to Rayshard, to Rayshard's memory, to Rayshard's family. Rest well, brother. Rest well. We were seeking to section that area off so that people would not park where his spirit left his body. And we left this message: rest well, Rayshard. We got it from here. Hashtag J4TNG. Will y'all help me make something out of that hashtag? Will you begin to uplift that? and people began to come and place flowers there at that part of the memorial site. We were just putting signs in place. There were signs in all the other areas of the memorials, and so we just wanted people to know that our crew was there from Greensboro, North Carolina. We wanted everybody to know that this was the site where Rayshard actually died. We're going to be headed back out there really soon, and don't you worry about us. We are safe. When we were in the crowd today at the march, we had our masks on. So when we go where there are large numbers of people, we are not unmasked, as it may seem. But we are safe, and we are not operating in anger. I'm sorry, in fear. Rather, we're not operating in fear out here in these streets. But people began to come and place flowers there. Citadel, you would be proud of our work thus far. And this is just day one. And after we began to graffiti the ground, all of a sudden, people began to come with spray paint cans by the dozens. And they began to place the names of other victims of brutality, racism, police brutality all over the parking lot of that Wendy's. And we were there leading this. We were there putting Sandra Bland's name on the ground, Trayvon Martin's name on the ground, Michael Brown's name on the ground, Eric Garner's name on the ground. We met an amazing sister who has been a community organizer for over 2 decades. And she was there with her passion, asking us, hey, can you come over here? Can you write this here? Can you write this there? This was a very, very, very eye-opening first day here in Atlanta. The people here in Atlanta, the people here in Georgia will not stand for this, you all. You would be very proud of both black and white folks that are calling, and I don't want to say calling lightly, they are demanding justice for yet another black body, Mr. Rayshard Brooks. So you all, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in to our special Monday Night Live Justice for the Next Generation presentation. Will you share this? Will you share this episode? It will live there on Facebook. We would love it if you would share the YouTube link. We want to continue to uplift these people, these martyrs for justice. We want to continue to uplift their memories, and we want to continue to seek and demand justice for the next generation. Please support us any way you can. Again, our Cash App is Drumwright, $Drumwright. Send us a line. Let us know, hey, I'm looking, I'm watching, I'm following, I'm with you. If you're interested in going with us to the March on Washington on August 28th, if you can help us to get some young folks there, just holler at us. You could actually reach out to me at greg@gregdrumwright.com. I will do my best to respond to everyone's email. From time to time, it takes me a little time, But nonetheless, I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. I'm here in Atlanta with my crew. I want to say thank you to the Citadel Church for your unyielding and unending support. Citadel, I love you. I will see you very soon. Please keep us in prayer. Live from Atlanta, this has been a special report. Justice for the next generation. Black lives matter.